I stared at the text message glowing on my phone screen, my hands trembling despite the 4 weeks of physical therapy they'd already endured. "Mom? I can't keep doing this. You've become a burden I never signed up for." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. My own daughter, Melissa, the little girl I had once cradled through countless fevers and heartbreaks, now found me too inconvenient to love. All because a sudden stroke at 63 had left me needing help to relearn the simple art of buttoning my own cardigan. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What Melissa didn't know, what she had never needed to know, until now, was that the very marketing firm where she'd recently been promoted to creative director existed because of me. 15 years ago, I had quietly provided the startup capital as a silent partner, watching from the shadows as my investment grew along with my daughter's career. Now I sat alone in my quiet house, wondering if I should finally reveal the truth, or simply sign the papers for the assisted living facility she'd left on my kitchen counter. 20 years ago, I was Margaret Wilson, respected economics professor at Lakeside University, recently divorced with a 25-year-old daughter who was just finding her footing in the professional world. My ex-husband, Howard, had left when Melissa was 17, swept away by a younger colleague who apparently understood his creative spirit better than the wife who had supported him through graduate school and 2 failed career attempts. The divorce had been difficult, but I took pride in how Melissa and I had grown even closer afterward. We had Sunday brunches every weekend, lengthy phone calls during the week, and she even accompanied me on my sabbatical trip to Portugal. "We're not just mother and daughter, we're best friends," she once told me, linking her arm through mine as we walked along the cobblestone streets of Lisbon. I never remarried. My life became comfortably predictable: teaching, research, occasional consulting work, and always making time for Melissa. Even when she met Daniel and they married 3 years later, our bond remained strong. I kept a respectful distance, careful not to intrude on their new life together, but Melissa still called me first with every piece of news, good or bad. When I was 50, a former student named Julian Reed approached me with a business proposal. He and 2 partners were starting a boutique marketing agency focused on sustainable businesses, and they needed an investor. "Your lectures on ethical capitalism changed my entire worldview," Julian told me earnestly over coffee. "We want to build a company that reflects those values." I had inherited a considerable sum from my parents years before and had invested wisely. The proposed amount wouldn't deplete my retirement savings, and something about Julian's vision resonated with me. "I'll consider it," I said, "but I have one unusual condition. My involvement must remain completely confidential. No one can know I'm an investor." Julian looked puzzled. "May I ask why?" I smiled, stirring my coffee. "My daughter is trying to make her way in marketing. She's talented and determined. If people knew her mother was financially connected to a firm in her industry, it would undermine her accomplishments. She'd never know if opportunities came because of her skills or my money." Julian agreed, and within months, Evergreen Marketing was born. I became the silent 4th partner, attending meetings remotely under the pseudonym MW Consulting. I watched with quiet pride as the little agency grew from 4 employees working in a converted warehouse space to a respected firm with 30 staff members and a downtown office. 7 years after Evergreen's founding, Melissa, who had been building her portfolio at larger agencies, applied for a position there, completely unaware of my connection. I recused myself from all hiring decisions, of course, but felt a surge of pride when Julian called to tell me they were offering her the job regardless of her connection to me. "She's exactly what we're looking for," he said. "Her portfolio is outstanding." I maintained my silence as Melissa excitedly told me about her wonderful new workplace, describing the company culture and values that I had helped shape from the beginning. Twice a year, I would meet discreetly with Julian and the other partners, offering guidance and reviewing financial statements. The arrangement worked perfectly. I could support my daughter's industry without casting a shadow over her achievements. 3 years ago, Daniel was offered a position in Phoenix. Melissa was heartbroken at the thought of leaving Evergreen, but to my surprise, the partners created a remote working arrangement for her. "They really value me, Mom," she told me, eyes shining. "They even said they're grooming me for leadership." I nodded, hiding my smile, knowing I had advocated for exactly this solution during our last partners' meeting. Life continued smoothly until 4 months ago, when I woke up unable to feel the right side of my body. The stroke was moderate, not life-threatening, but significant enough to require extensive rehabilitation. Suddenly, I needed help with basic tasks: cooking, cleaning, even dressing myself some days. My world contracted to hospital rooms, therapy appointments, and the humbling process of relearning movements most people take for granted. At first, Melissa was attentive, driving 3 hours from Phoenix every other weekend to check on me. But as weeks stretched into months and my progress remained frustratingly slow, her visits became shorter and less frequent. Her texts grew terse, filled with links to assisted living brochures rather than words of encouragement. "It makes sense financially," she insisted during her last visit, refusing to meet my eyes as she placed the glossy facility booklets on my coffee table. "Your house is too big for one person anyway, especially now that you can't manage the stairs." Well, I didn't tell her that the physical therapist had actually praised my progress on the stairs just the day before. I didn't mention that my neighbor Carol came by daily to help with meals, or that my former teaching assistant Amal had organized a rotation of students to assist with grocery shopping and yard work. I simply listened as my daughter explained why warehousing me among strangers was the most practical solution. 2 days later, she sent the text that now glowed accusingly on my phone screen. A burden. That's what I had become to her. Nearly 4 decades of love, sacrifice, and support reduced to an inconvenience that could be solved with a checkbook and a change of address. I set my phone down and wheeled myself to my home office. The one room Melissa hadn't entered during her visits because I'd claimed it was too cluttered. Inside a locked drawer sat 15 years of evergreen documentation, partnership agreements, financial statements, strategy plans, many bearing my signature alongside Julian's and the other founding partners. Tomorrow, Evergreen would announce Melissa's promotion to creative director. Julian had called last week to inform me, his voice tinged with irony. "She's extraordinary, Margaret, just like her mother." My finger hovered over his contact information on my phone. One call would be all it took to reveal the truth. Would it change anything? Would knowing I had quietly supported her career path all these years make her see me as something more than a burden? I placed the phone down without making the call. Revelation as revenge wasn't my style. Instead, I reached for the stack of assisted living brochures Melissa had left behind. The most expensive option, Sunridge Gardens, had caught my eye earlier. Not because I intended to move there, but because it was built on land adjacent to Evergreen's headquarters. Land that, through a separate investment vehicle, I happened to own. Perhaps it was time for Margaret Wilson to come out of the shadows, not with dramatic disclosures, but with something more subtle. Something that would give Melissa the opportunity to rediscover her mother on her own terms. I picked up my phone again and called Julian. "We need to schedule an in-person partners meeting," I said when he answered. "At the office. And this time, I'll be attending physically, not virtually." Julian's surprise was evident in his voice. "Are you sure? After 15 years of anonymity?" "Yes," I said, a plan taking shape in my mind. It's time for MW Consulting to have a face. That night, I slept better than I had since the stroke. In the morning, I called Carol and asked her to help me prepare for an important meeting. She arrived with enthusiasm, helping me select a tailored navy suit that had hung untouched in my closet since retirement. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "You look powerful," she said, as I studied my reflection. The woman in the mirror was thinner than before the stroke, with new lines etched around her eyes and mouth. But her back was straight, her gaze clear and determined. "That's exactly what I was hoping for," I replied, reaching for the cane that had replaced my wheelchair just last week, another milestone I hadn't shared with Melissa. Carol drove me downtown, pulling up in front of the sleek 6-story building that housed Evergreen, marketing on its top 2 floors. I'd seen it in photographs, of course, and had approved the lease agreements, but had never visited in person. Now, looking up at the green-tinted windows gleaming in the morning sun, I felt a wave of pride mixed with apprehension. "Shall I wait? For you?" Carol asked. I shook my head. "I might be a while, and I think I'll have another ride home." The receptionist looked up with a professional smile as I approached slowly, leaning more heavily on my cane than I needed to. "Welcome to Evergreen Marketing. How may I help you?" "I'm here for the partners meeting, Margaret Wilson." Her smile faltered slightly. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. The partners meeting is only for Margaret." Julian's voice boomed across the lobby as he emerged from the elevator. Tall and lean, his once dark hair now salt and pepper, he crossed the space in long strides and took my free hand in both of his. "Right on time. Everyone's waiting upstairs." The receptionist's confused expression confirmed what I'd suspected. My name had never appeared on any visitor list in 15 years. Julian escorted me to the elevator, keeping his pace matched to mine. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly once the doors closed behind us. "Absolutely," I replied, watching the floor numbers climb. "Though I'd appreciate if you could arrange for my daughter to join us toward the end of the meeting." Julian's eyebrows rose, but he nodded. "She's currently in a creative review. I'll have my assistant bring her in at 11. The boardroom fell silent as Julian ushered me in. 2 familiar faces, partners I'd only ever seen through video calls, stared, back with undisguised shock. "Everyone," Julian announced, "I'd like you to finally meet Margaret Wilson, the real person behind MW Consulting. Margaret has been with Evergreen since the beginning, but this is her first time joining us in person." Timothy Chen, the financial D. partner, recovered first. "This is quite the surprise," he said, standing to pull out a chair for me. "After all these years, we'd almost come to think of MW Consulting as a concept rather than a person." "A rather profitable concept," I replied with a small smile, easing myself into the offered seat. The meeting proceeded normally. Quarterly results, upcoming campaigns, strategic initiatives. I participated as I always had, offering insights and asking pointed questions about resource allocation and client ethics. The only difference was the physical presence that made it impossible for anyone to forget my contributions. At precisely 11 o'clock, a knock interrupted Timothy's presentation on the upcoming fiscal year projections. "Come in," Julian called. The door opened to reveal a young assistant. "You asked to see Melissa Parker, sir?" "Yes, please send her in." Moments later, my daughter walked into the room. She looked polished and professional in a burgundy dress and blazer, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun, so different from the casual style she wore during her increasingly rare visits to my home. Her confident expression faltered when she spotted me, confusion and then alarm flashing across her face. "Mom, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" Before I could answer, Julian interjected smoothly. "Melissa, I'd like you to meet Margaret Wilson, also known as MW Consulting. She's been a founding partner of Evergreen since the beginning." Melissa's eyes widened, darting between Julian and me. "What? That's not—" "Mom is a retired economics professor." "Among other things," I said quietly. Please, sit down, Melissa. This won't take long. She sank into the nearest chair, her professional composure visibly cracking. I don't understand. I looked around the table. Would you all excuse us for a few minutes? I'd like to speak with my daughter privately. The partners nodded, filing out with curious glances over their shoulders. When the door closed behind them, Melissa leaned forward. What is this? Some kind of joke? I reached into my portfolio and extracted a copy of the original partnership agreement, sliding it across the table. 15 years ago, I helped start this company with Julian. I've been a silent partner ever since, attending meetings remotely, reviewing strategies, providing capital when needed. Melissa stared at the document, her finger tracing over my signature at the bottom. Why would you hide this from me, all these years? Because you needed to succeed on your own terms, I said simply. Because every accomplishment means more when you believe it came from your own merit, not family connections. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed the paper back toward me. So all this time, while I've been telling you about my work, my promotions, I've been genuinely proud, I finished for her. Your success here has been entirely your own. I recused myself from all decisions regarding your career. Ask Julian if you don't believe me. Melissa sat back, her expression hardening. Is this why you asked me to come here today? To reveal your big secret and make me feel, what, guilty? Indebted? I shook my head. I revealed my identity today because circumstances have changed. My health situation has made continuing, in a remote, anonymous capacity, impractical. So, this is about the assisted living facility? Her voice rose slightly. You're using your position here to punish me for suggesting a practical solution to your situation? No, Melissa. This is about honesty. You see me as a burden now, and perhaps that's fair from your perspective. But I need you to see me completely. Not just as your mother who needs help buttoning cardigans, but as a whole person with a life that extends beyond our relationship. Melissa's eyes glistened with unshed tears. You had no right to keep this from me. Just as you have no right to reduce decades of motherhood to an inconvenience that can be solved with an institution, I countered, my voice remaining gentle despite the harshness of the words. We sat in tense silence, the weight of unspoken emotions filling the space between us. Finally, Melissa spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. When Dad left, you told me we would always have each other, that we would never abandon each other. But now you're diminished. Different. Needing things I don't know how to give. The raw honesty of her words struck me like a physical blow. I'm still the same person, Melissa, just in a body that works differently now. But for how long? The doctors said you might have another stroke, that you might need even more care. Daniel and I have our lives in Phoenix. We can't just... I'm not asking you to upend your life, I interrupted. But I am asking you to see me as more than a problem to be solved. The woman who built this company is the same woman who raised you. Both required creativity, determination, and yes, sometimes asking for help. Melissa looked away, her profile, so like my own at her age, stubborn chin, high forehead, eyes that revealed every emotion no matter how she tried to hide them. Congratulations on your promotion to creative director, I said after another silence. It's well-deserved. Her head snapped back toward me. You knew about that? I'm still a partner here. I'm informed of all major decisions. She shook her head slowly, still processing. All these years, the flexible remote arrangement when Daniel got the Phoenix job was approved by all partners based on your performance, I finished firmly. Including me, yes, but I would never have advocated for it if you hadn't earned it. The intercom on the boardroom phone buzzed. Julian's voice came through. Everything. Okay in there? The team needs the room for the next meeting in about 5 minutes. Melissa reached over and pressed the response button, We need a few more minutes, please. She released the button and looked at me. Why now? Why tell me today? I leaned forward, resting my hands on the sleek conference table. Because tomorrow you begin your role as creative director. Because I want you to walk into that position, knowing exactly who you are and what you've accomplished. And because I want you to understand that being physically vulnerable doesn't erase everything else a person is. And the text? My calling you a burden? Is this your way of punishing me for that? I shook my head. No. This is my way of reminding both of us who we are to each other, more than a burden, more than an obligation. We're two women who have supported each other through challenges neither of us expected. Melissa's phone chimed with a notification. She glanced down at it, then looked up with renewed confusion. An email from Sunridge Gardens confirming a tour this afternoon? I didn't schedule that. I did, I said. I'd like you to come with me to see it. That text I sent. I was frustrated and— I know, I interrupted gently. We're going to tour it together, and then we're going to have a real conversation about what happens next. Not with you deciding, for me, or me hiding things from you, but together, as equals. Melissa nodded slowly. Equals. With one important difference, I added, allowing a small smile. I'm still the parent company, so to speak. A startled laugh escaped her, perhaps the first genuine moment between us in months. I can't believe you kept this secret for 15 years. I've had practice keeping secrets, I said, my smile fading. Like not telling you how much it hurt when you stopped coming for weekend visits. Or how it felt to hear you call me a burden after 4 decades of making sure you never felt like one to me. Melissa flinched. Mom, But that's over now, I continued. No more secrets. No more protecting each other from difficult truths. Deal? She held my gaze for a long moment before nodding. Deal. Julian knocked softly before opening the door. I hate to interrupt, but we really do need the room. We're finished, I said, gathering my portfolio and rising carefully from my chair. Melissa automatically moved to help me, her hand coming to rest supportively beneath my elbow. The gesture was small, but spoke volumes, an instinctive care that existed beneath the frustration and fear. Will you be joining us for lunch to celebrate Melissa's promotion? Julian asked. I glanced at my daughter. Actually, we have another appointment. A tour of some property I'm considering. Real estate investment? Always a smart move, Julian said approvingly. Perhaps, I replied. Though I'm less interested in the investment potential than in making sure my daughter and I both understand exactly what we're committing to. As we walked slowly toward the elevator, Melissa's hand still steady beneath my elbow, I felt something shift between us. Not a complete resolution, but a beginning. A recognition that our relationship, like my health and her career, would require ongoing attention and care to flourish. The stroke had taken things from me, certainly, but it had also revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed and exposed. Weaknesses in connections I had believed unshakable. As we stepped into the elevator together, I realized that sometimes being seen as fragile gives you an unexpected kind of power. The power to demand honesty, to reject false comforts, to insist on being known completely. I never intended to move to Sunridge Gardens, I admitted as the elevator doors closed behind us. But I think we should see what $3,000 a month actually buys these days. Melissa's eyebrows shot up. 3,000? The brochure said starting at 2,000. Read the fine print, I advised, the economics professor in me emerging. It's always in the fine print. She laughed again, the sound echoing in the small space. I guess I should have known better than to try to manage the finances of a secret corporate investor. Among other mistakes, I agreed mildly. As the elevator descended, I caught our reflection in its polished doors, mother and daughter, both standing straight, despite different kinds of burdens. There would be difficult conversations ahead, compromises and adjustments on both sides. But for the first time since the stroke, I felt like we were moving in the same direction. That evening, sitting in my living room with tea Melissa had prepared, we began making lists. What I needed help with, what I could manage alone, what resources could be brought in that weren't her or an institution. The conversation was sometimes tense, occasionally tearful, but fundamentally honest in a way we hadn't been with each other in years. "I'm sorry I called you a burden," she said finally, setting down her notepad. "I was scared. Seeing you in the hospital, then struggling with therapy. It was like watching a different person inhabit my mother's body. I didn't know how to reconcile that with the woman who's always been my rock. I'm still me," I said. "Just moving a bit slower, and sometimes needing help with buttons." "And I'm still me," she replied. "Just sometimes overwhelmed and not handling it very gracefully." I reached across the coffee table to take her hand. "We'll figure this out. No assisted living for now, but yes to some in-home help. And maybe more regular video calls instead of those 3-hour drives every weekend." Melissa squeezed my hand gently. "And maybe you could consider coming to the company holiday party this year? As yourself, not MW Consulting?" "I'd like that," I said, surprised to find it was true. After years of deliberate anonymity, the thought of being fully seen, in all my complexity, including my physical challenges, felt unexpectedly liberating. Later, as Melissa prepared the guest room for an overnight stay, I found myself looking at the family photos arranged on my mantel. Me holding infant Melissa, Melissa's college graduation, our trip to Portugal, moments of connection captured in silver frames. The stroke had changed me, there was no denying that. But it had also changed us, forcing a reckoning that perhaps was long overdue. The company I had helped build in secret had thrived. Now it was time to tend to a more important partnership with the same careful attention. "Mom," Melissa called, from upstairs. "Where do you keep the extra blankets these days?" "Hall closet, middle shelf," I called back. Some things haven't changed. I heard her moving around upstairs, continuing the work of rediscovering her place in this house, in my life. We were starting again, this time with all our cards on the table. Both of us visible. Both of us valuable. Neither of us merely a burden to be carried or a secret to be kept. 2 weeks after our tour of Sunridge Gardens, Melissa returned to Phoenix. We'd spent those 14 days reorganizing my home, installing grab bars in the bathrooms, moving essential items to lower shelves, and interviewing home health aides who could help with physical therapy exercises and household chores. The woman we eventually hired, Eleanor, had a warm laugh and forearms strong enough to support me when the stairs became too daunting. Most importantly, she treated me like a person, not a collection of medical symptoms. "I'll call every evening," Melissa promised as she packed her suitcase. Her eyes kept drifting to the framed partnership agreement I'd hung in the hallway. Her suggestion, surprisingly. "A reminder," she said, "that appearances rarely tell the complete story." "You don't need to call every day," I replied, folding one of her sweaters and handing it to her. "We both have work to do." She paused, a pair of shoes halfway into her bag. "It's strange to think about you going back to evergreen meetings. All those times I rambled about projects and deadlines. You already knew everything." "Not everything," I corrected. "I knew the business side, but you've always been the creative force. That's all yours." Melissa nodded slowly. "Julian told me they're converting the small conference room on the 5th floor, making it fully accessible for partner meetings." A lump formed in my throat. "That's thoughtful." "I suggested it," she admitted, "after seeing how that boardroom chair hurt your back." This was new, my daughter noticing physical challenges. I tried to hide, acknowledging them without pity or frustration. small evidence of our evolving relationship. After Melissa left, the house felt emptier than usual. I stood in her vacated guest room, running my fingers over the edge of the desk, where she'd set up her laptop for the 2 weeks, working remotely between helping me adapt my living space. On the corner of the desk, she'd left something, a small potted succulent with a note. Hard to kill, just like its owner. Call me when you need me, not just when you think I can handle it. That evening, I joined my first formal partner meeting, at Evergreen since revealing my identity. Julian had arranged for a car service, sparing me the exhaustion of navigating public transportation with my still unreliable balance. The driver, a quiet young man named Thomas, helped me from the front, duck her to the car with a respectful efficiency that preserved my dignity. The promised accessible conference room was ready. A round table allowing everyone equal space, chairs with proper lumbar support, and subtle grab bars disguised as modern wall accents near the doorway. Timothy Chen was already there, reviewing financial projections. "Margaret," he greeted me standing. "Welcome back. Or perhaps I should say, welcome officially." Julian arrived next, followed by Helena Ortiz, the newest partner who had joined 3 years ago and whom I'd only ever met through video calls. She approached with undisguised curiosity. "I still can't believe we never knew," she said, taking the seat beside me. 15 years of mystery. Academic women often become skilled at working behind the scenes, I replied with a smile. History is full of female intellectuals whose contributions were anonymous by necessity. "Well, those days are over," Julian declared, distributing tablets containing the meeting agenda. MW Consulting is officially retired. From now on, all documentation will list Margaret Wilson as founding partner. I felt a complicated emotion rise within me. Pride mingled with a strange melancholy for my former anonymity. There was safety in invisibility, in contributing without scrutiny of my abilities or physical limitations. But perhaps there was something stronger in visibility, in claiming space despite those limitations. The meeting proceeded efficiently. We discussed a potential expansion into the healthcare marketing sector, reviewed the previous quarter's performance, and debated the merits of bringing on another junior partner. My contributions were received with the same respect they had always commanded, despite my occasional pause to find a word. Another lingering effect of the stroke. Toward the end, Julian raised a topic I hadn't anticipated. "Margaret, the team, has been discussing how to better leverage your economics background. We've drafted a proposal for a new sustainability consulting division under your leadership." Timothy passed me a folder containing a detailed business plan. "Your academic publications on ethical capitalism are more relevant than ever. Several clients have specifically requested guidance on transitioning to more sustainable models without sacrificing profitability." I stared at the proposal, caught off guard. This is ambitious. "It would be a limited schedule," Helena added. Quickly. 2 or 3 client meetings per month, with a support team handling the day-to-day operations. You'd be the strategic mind, not the implementation workhorse. They were offering me more than continued partnership. They were creating a role that acknowledged both my expertise and my new physical reality. A position where my mind could contribute even as my body recovered at its stubborn, gradual pace. "I'll need time to review this," I said, trying to keep the emotion from my voice. Julian nodded. "Of course. We've scheduled the official announcement of the new division for next month's client appreciation event, assuming you approve the concept." As the meeting concluded, Helena lingered. "I hope this isn't overstepping," she said hesitantly, "but I've been following your academic work since graduate school. Your paper on the false dichotomy between profit and ethics fundamentally changed my approach to business. It's an honor to finally work with you directly." I thanked her, oddly moved by this reminder of professional impact that existed entirely, separate from my family relationships. On the drive home, I found myself reading through the proposal again, my mind already spinning with possibilities and refinements. That night, during our scheduled call, I told Melissa about the proposed consulting division. "They want to build something around your expertise?" she asked, sounding genuinely pleased. "That's perfect for you, Mom." "It would mean being more visible," I said. "Attending client meetings, perhaps some public speaking eventually." "With your cane and occasional word-finding pauses," she acknowledged directly. 2 weeks ago, she would have skirted around these realities, but our new honesty policy had changed the boundaries of our conversations. "Yes," I confirmed. "With all of that." "Good," she said firmly. "The business world could use more visible examples of brilliance that doesn't come in conventionally perfect packaging." Her words stayed with me as I reviewed the proposal over the following days. Eleanor would arrive each morning to help with physical therapy and household tasks, then leave me to my work, spreading papers across the dining room table, making notes, researching industry trends. The routine felt familiar, reminiscent of my academic days, but with a new practical application that energized me. By the end of the week, I had restructured the proposal significantly, adding components addressing international standards compliance and measurable outcome metrics. I emailed my revised version to Julian with a note. "I accept the position with these modifications." His response came within the hour. "Brilliant improvements. The team will be thrilled. Welcome back to the professional world, Margaret." I sat back in my chair, gazing out the window at my autumn garden. My neighbor Carol was raking leaves, waving when she spotted me watching. I waved back, realizing that my world had begun expanding again after the contraction that followed my stroke. First the house, then Evergreen's offices, and soon client locations and perhaps conference venues. My territory was growing as my body strengthened. The following Monday, I had my regular checkup with Dr. Patel, the neurologist who had overseen my care since the stroke. He reviewed my latest test results with evident satisfaction. "Your progress is remarkable, Margaret," he said, making notes in my file. "Your dedication to the rehabilitation exercises is paying off." "Will I get back to normal?" I asked. The question that had lingered unspoken through months of therapy. Dr. Patel set down his tablet and looked at me directly. "Define normal," he challenged gently. I considered this. Will my right side always be weaker? Will I always search for words that used to come easily? "Most likely, yes, to some degree," he answered honestly. "But normal is just a setting on a washing machine. Your brain is building new neural pathways every day. You're not returning to your previous state. You're adapting, creating a new baseline." His words echoed in my mind as Eleanor drove me home. A new baseline. Not recovery as restoration of what was lost, but as creation of something different. Something that incorporated the reality of my changed body into a life still worth living. That evening, Melissa called earlier than our scheduled time. "I've been thinking," she said without preamble. "What if we converted your home office into a bedroom? You could avoid the stairs entirely." I glanced toward the staircase I had been ascending and descending carefully each day, one deliberate step at a time. "I'm managing the stairs now," I said. "Dr. Patel actually believes it's good exercise." "But if you had another stroke?" "If I have another stroke, we'll reassess," I interrupted firmly. "Until then, I'm not rearranging my entire home around a hypothetical future." Silence hummed across the phone line. Then Melissa sighed. "You're right. I'm doing it again, trying to solve problems you haven't asked me to solve." "Your concern comes from love," I acknowledged, "but perhaps with a dash of wanting to control an uncontrollable situation." She laughed softly. "A family trait, apparently. Julian mentioned your minor revisions to the consulting division proposal. He said you basically rewrote the entire framework." "I made some suggestions," I demurred. "Mom?" Melissa's voice turned serious. I wanted to ask you something. The marketing team is developing the materials for the new division launch. Would you be willing to include your stroke experience in your professional bio? Not as a focus, just as part of your journey? My immediate instinct was refusal. My medical history was private, not marketing material, but I forced myself to consider the request more carefully before responding. Why? I asked finally. Because authenticity has power, Melissa replied. Because clients facing sustainability challenges need to see that adaptation doesn't mean compromise or failure. Because your story is part of what makes your expertise unique now. I thought about Dr. Patel's words, not returning to a previous state, but creating something new. I'll consider it, I said. Send me the draft bio, and I'll make appropriate edits. 3 days later, the draft arrived in my email. It was professionally written, highlighting my academic background, published works, and business experience. The final paragraph read, "In 2023, Margaret experienced a stroke that temporarily paused her professional activities. Her return to business consulting brings a renewed perspective on resilience and adaptive strategies, principles that inform her approach to sustainable business practices." I stared at the words for a long time, cursor blinking beside them. They were tactfully worded, positioning my medical challenge as a source of insight rather than limitation. After careful consideration, I added one sentence. She believes that genuine sustainability, whether personal or organizational, comes not from resistance to change, but from thoughtful adaptation to new realities. I sent the revised version back to Melissa with a simple note. Approved with one addition. Her reply came minutes later. Perfect, just like its author. The weeks leading up to the client appreciation event were filled with preparation. I met with the team developing materials for the Sustainability Consulting Division, reviewed client profiles, and continued my physical therapy with renewed determination. Eleanor noted my increased stamina with approval, though she still insisted on afternoon rest periods when she caught me pushing too hard. 3 days before the event, Julian called with a request. We'd like you to say a few words at the launch. Nothing elaborate, just a brief introduction to the division's mission. Public speaking was not part of our agreement, I reminded him. 5 minutes, he countered. Your economic perspective gives the concept credibility no marketing specialist could provide. I hesitated, imagining myself standing at a podium, possibly struggling with words, leaning on my cane before an audience of corporate clients. The image made my stomach tighten with anxiety. Let me think about it, I said finally. That evening, I called Melissa. Julian wants me to speak at the event. He mentioned he'd ask, she admitted. What are you thinking? That it's too soon, I said honestly. My speech is still affected when I'm tired or nervous, which you would definitely be while public speaking, she acknowledged. Exactly. Melissa was quiet for a moment. You know, I've been working with a client recently, a tech CEO who happens to have a significant stutter. He doesn't hide it, or apologize for it. He just speaks his brilliant ideas with occasional pauses and repetitions, and everyone listens because what he's saying matters. That's different, I protested. He's established in his field with that speech pattern. I'm re-entering professional life with new limitations. Or, Melissa suggested gently, you're continuing your professional journey with new dimensions of experience. I recognized my own words from the bio reflected back to me. Using my medical condition as a marketing strategy still feels exploitative. Not if it's authentic, she countered. Not if it's part of the genuine value you bring. Mom, you've spent your whole career advocating for ethical approaches to capitalism. Maybe this is just another expression of that, showing that human value isn't limited to perfect efficiency. After we hung up, I sat in my garden watching twilight settle over the chrysanthemums. A light rain began to fall, droplets clinging to bronze and crimson petals before slowly sliding away. I thought about visibility and invisibility, about the comfortable shadow of MW Consulting versus the exposed position of Margaret Wilson, stroke survivor and economic consultant. The next morning I called Julian. "I'll speak," I said, "but briefly and with one condition." "Name it," he replied immediately. "I want a seat at the podium. I'll speak sitting down." There was a brief pause before Julian answered. "Of course, we'll arrange it." The day of the client appreciation event arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. Eleanor helped me dress in a tailored charcoal suit with subtle blue pinstripes, professional without being severe. My silver hair, which I'd let grow longer since the stroke, was swept back in a simple style that framed my face without fussiness. "You look like you could run the Federal Reserve," Eleanor declared, adjusting my jacket slightly. I smiled at her reflection in the mirror. "Let's start with one consulting division before taking on the national economy." The car service arrived precisely on time. As we drove downtown, I reviewed my notes one last time. 3 paragraphs outlining the philosophical foundation of the sustainability division. Simple language, important concepts. I had practiced repeatedly, identifying words that might trip me up and substituting alternatives that my post-stroke brain could access more reliably. Evergreen's offices had been transformed for the event. The reception area featured elegant floral arrangements and a sophisticated buffet. Staff members circulated with trays of champagne and sparkling water. I recognized several clients from proposal documents, executives from regional companies, sustainability officers from larger corporations, representatives from nonprofit organizations. Julian met me at the entrance, guiding me through the crowd with subtle support. "Everyone's excited to meet the mysterious MW," he said quietly. "You've become something of a legend since word got out." "Legends are rarely as impressive in person," I replied dryly. "I disagree," said a voice to my right. Helena approached, elegant in a deep green dress. The legend of MW Consulting pales compared to the reality of Professor Margaret Wilson. We were interrupted by Timothy announcing that the presentation would begin in 5 minutes. Julian escorted me to the conference room, now arranged with rows of chairs facing a small stage. At the center stood a podium with a chair positioned behind it, exactly as I had requested. Guests filed in, filling the seats quickly. I spotted several former academic colleagues among them, people I hadn't seen since retiring from the university. My hands tightened around my note cards as adrenaline surged through me. Julian opened the presentation with a brief history of Evergreen, marketing, tactfully highlighting my role as founding partner without revealing how long my identity had remained confidential. He outlined the company's evolution and growing focus on ethical business practices, then segued into the announcement of the new division. To introduce this initiative properly, I'm honored to welcome Professor Margaret Wilson, whose economic theories on sustainable capitalism form the foundation of our approach. Applause filled the room as Julian helped me to the stage. I settled into the chair behind the podium, adjusting the microphone to my seated position. The faces before me blurred slightly before coming into focus, attentive, curious, evaluating. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in my chest. "Conventional economic theory treats sustainability as an expensive luxury, a moral choice that necessarily reduces profitability." I paused, finding my rhythm. This perspective creates a false dichotomy between ethical practice and business success. The Sustainability Consulting Division at Evergreen rejects this premise entirely. As I continued speaking, I noticed Melissa slipping into the back of the room. She hadn't mentioned attending the event, knowing I might feel additional pressure with her watching, but there she was, standing quietly against the wall, her expression a mixture of pride and something else. Perhaps wonder at seeing this professional side of her mother fully displayed for the first time. Adaptation is not compromise, I concluded, after outlining our approach. It is evolution. And evolution is the only sustainable business strategy in a world of finite resources and changing conditions. The applause was immediate and sustained. Julian returned to the stage, thanking me and inviting attendees to review materials about the new division available in the reception area. As people began to file out, several approached the stage to introduce themselves or ask questions about specific aspects of the consulting services. I answered each inquiry thoughtfully, aware that my speech sometimes slowed as I searched for precise terminology. But no one seemed impatient or uncomfortable with these brief hesitations. They were listening to the substance of my responses, not fixating on their delivery. When the crowd finally thinned, Melissa made her way to the stage. "That was remarkable," she said, helping me gather my notes. "You've never let me see this side of you before." "Which side is that?" I asked, somewhat puzzled. "The economic visionary," she clarified. "I knew you were a professor, of course. But watching you command a room of executives with your ideas, that's new." I smiled, realizing she was right. Throughout her childhood and young adulthood, Melissa had known me primarily as a mother who happened to teach economics. She'd attended a few of my lectures over the years, but never seen me in a true professional leadership role. There are always aspects of our parents we don't fully grasp until we're adults ourselves, I observed. Julian approached with an older man I recognized as the CEO of a regional manufacturing company. "Margaret, Robert Delgado is interested in being one of our first sustainability consulting clients. His company is transitioning to new materials and production processes. Professor Wilson, your perspective on adaptation versus resistance. In business, evolution resonates deeply with the challenges we're facing," Delgado said, extending his hand. "I'd like to schedule a comprehensive evaluation of our current sustainability initiatives." I glanced at Julian, who nodded slightly, confirming this was exactly the kind of high-profile client we had hoped to attract. "I'd be delighted to discuss your specific situation," I replied. "Perhaps we could begin with an overview meeting next week?" As Julian and Delgado worked out scheduling details, Melissa touched my arm. "I need to catch my flight back to Phoenix, but I wanted to say goodbye first." "Thank you for coming," I said, genuinely moved by her presence. "It means a great deal." "I wouldn't have missed it," she replied. "Seeing you today, it reminded me of something I've always known but somehow forgot during these difficult months. You've never been defined by your limitations, only by how you respond to them." I reached for her hand. "Neither of us has handled this transition perfectly." "But we're finding our way," she said, squeezing my fingers gently. "New baseline, right?" I looked at her sharply. "How did you know that phrase?" "Dr. Patel mentioned it during our last conference call about your treatment plan," she admitted. "It stuck with me." The revelation that she had been consulting with my doctor independently should have bothered me, another example of her taking control without asking. But instead, I found it touching, evidence of her continued concern, even as she learned to respect my autonomy. New baseline, I agreed, for both of us. After Melissa left for her flight, I remained at the event for another hour, engaged in conversations with potential clients and industry colleagues. By the time Julian suggested calling the car service, I was exhausted, but exhilarated, a familiar feeling from my academic days after a particularly successful lecture or conference presentation. "Today exceeded our expectations," Julian said, as he walked me to the elevator. 3 potential clients already, and Robert Delgado's involvement will likely attract others. "It's a promising start," I agreed, consciously downplaying my own satisfaction. Old habits of professional modesty died hard. "More than promising," Julian countered. It's the beginning of something significant, and none of it would have happened without you stepping out from behind the MW consulting curtain. As the elevator doors opened, he added, "By the way, Melissa did a remarkable job with the marketing materials. The way she positioned your experience as an asset rather than a limitation, that was brilliant strategic thinking." I nodded, a surge of parental pride momentarily overwhelming my fatigue. She's always had an intuitive understanding of how to frame complex narratives. "A family trait, evidently," Julian observed with a smile. The car was waiting when we reached the lobby. As Thomas held the door for me, Julian handed me a small gift bag. "From the partners, a token of appreciation for today." Inside was a sleek business card holder in polished walnut. The cards inside read, "Margaret Wilson, founding partner and sustainability consultant," followed by contact information and Evergreen's logo. Below my name in smaller italic font was the phrase, "Adaptation is not compromise, it is evolution." My own words, now formalized as something of a personal motto. I ran my finger over the embossed lettering, suddenly aware of how far I had come from that morning 4 months ago, when I woke unable to feel the right side of my body, terrified that my independent life had ended. "Thank you," I said, my voice slightly thick with emotion. "For everything." Julian squeezed my shoulder gently. "Welcome back to the visible world, Margaret. It suits you." That night, I called Melissa to let her know how the rest of the event had gone. She answered immediately, sounding breathless. "I was just about to call you. How did everything go?" "After I left?" 3 potential clients, I reported, including Robert Delgado. "That's fantastic. His company has been trying to improve their sustainability metrics for years." She paused, then added, "I meant what I said earlier, Mom. Watching you today, it reminded me of who you've always been." "And who is that?" I asked, genuinely curious about how my daughter saw me. "Someone who finds clarity where others see only complications," she replied without hesitation. "Whether it's explaining economic theory to undergraduates or helping a confused teenager understand her parents' divorce or building a new life after a medical crisis. You've always been able to find the path forward when others can only see obstacles." Her words warmed me deeply. "I haven't always felt that way these past few months," I admitted. "None of us are our best selves during a crisis," she said. "But the foundation remains, even when the structure shakes." We talked for another half-hour about practical matters. Her upcoming visit for Thanksgiving, some minor modifications Eleanor had suggested for the bathroom, a new physical therapy regimen Dr. Patel wanted me to try. The ease of our conversation felt like a homecoming after months of tension and misunderstanding. As we were about to hang up, Melissa said quietly, "I've been thinking about something. That text I sent, calling you a burden. I need you to know I didn't really mean it." "You did mean it," I corrected gently. "In that moment of fear and frustration, you meant it completely, and that's okay. The truth is, I am a burden sometimes. My condition does create challenges for you, for Eleanor, for myself. Pretending otherwise doesn't serve either of us. But the problem wasn't that you called me a burden," I continued. "It was that you reduced me to only that. You stopped seeing everything else I am beyond the medical needs. And I understand why. It's overwhelming to watch someone you love struggle." Melissa was quiet for a moment. "I never thought about it that way." "We all become burdens at different points in our lives," I said. "As an infant, you were the most beautiful burden I ever carried. The question isn't whether we become burdens to each other. It's whether we're willing to carry each other when necessary." "I'm willing," she said softly. "I just needed to find my balance." "So did I acknowledged. "And I think we're getting there, one step at a time." After we hung up, I sat on my patio watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. The evening air was cool but not uncomfortable, carrying the scent of late roses and damp earth. From inside, I could hear Eleanor moving about the kitchen, preparing a light dinner before she left for the night. I thought about burden and value, visibility and shadow, about how quickly relationships can fracture under pressure and how painstakingly they must be rebuilt, about how my anonymity at Evergreen had served its purpose for 15 years, but how stepping into the light, even with my imperfect speech and unreliable balance, had opened possibilities I hadn't imagined. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, client meetings to prepare for, therapy exercises to complete, everyday tasks that required additional thought and effort. But tonight, sitting beneath the vast bowl of stars, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before the stroke: anticipation rather than apprehension, curiosity about what might develop rather than fear of what might be lost. Eleanor appeared at the patio door. "Dinner's ready whenever you are, Margaret, and don't forget your evening medication." "Thank you," I said, rising carefully from the chair. "I'm coming in now." As I made my way toward the warm light of the kitchen, I thought about Melissa's words, about finding clarity where others see only complications. Perhaps that was the unexpected gift of this difficult journey, the clarity to distinguish between what was truly important and what could be released. The wisdom to recognize that adaptation wasn't surrender but transformation, and the courage to remain fully visible, even when that visibility revealed both strength and vulnerability. November brought the first frost, glittering across my garden like diamond dust in the early morning light. I stood at the kitchen window, nursing a cup of tea, watching a cardinal flit between the bare branches of my maple tree. 6 months since the stroke. Half a year of rebuilding neural pathways, strengthening weakened muscles, and reconstructing the relationship with my daughter. The consulting division had been operational for 3 weeks now, with 4 active clients and several more in discussion phases. I was working 3 days a week, 1 day from home, conducting virtual meetings, and 2 days at the Evergreen offices, where the accessible conference room had become my unofficial headquarters. The work energized me in ways I hadn't anticipated, bringing a renewed sense of purpose that even my academic career hadn't fully provided. My phone chimed with a text from Eleanor, running 15 minutes late. Traffic on Madison Ave. I texted back a simple acknowledgement. 6 months ago, a disruption to my carefully structured morning would have caused anxiety. Now I simply adjusted my expectations and continued sipping my tea. The stroke had taught me patience by necessity. There was no rushing a body that refused to cooperate, no hurrying neural connections that needed time to rebuild. While waiting for Eleanor, I opened my laptop to review preparation materials for the day's client meeting. Robert Delgado's manufacturing company was implementing our first phase recommendations, converting production processes to reduce waste and energy consumption. The preliminary data showed promising results, though several challenges had emerged that would require creative solutions. Eleanor arrived apologetic and slightly breathless. "Sorry for the delay. Car accident blocked 2 lanes." "No problem," I said, closing my laptop. "I've reviewed the Delgado file and eaten breakfast. We're still on schedule." She hung up her coat and immediately began the routine we had established, helping me with the more challenging physical therapy exercises, then assisting with personal care tasks that remained difficult for me to manage alone. Her efficiency was balanced with genuine warmth, creating a dynamic that preserved my dignity while acknowledging my limitations. "Melissa called while you were in the shower yesterday," Eleanor mentioned as she helped me into the blazer that completed my outfit for the day. "She wanted to confirm her flight information for Thanksgiving. I told her you'd call back." "Thank you," I replied, making a mental note. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away, and Melissa and Daniel would be visiting for the long weekend, their first trip back since our reconciliation. Eleanor drove me to the Evergreen offices, maintaining light conversation about her daughter's college applications and the unseasonably cold weather. I had learned more about Eleanor's life in 3 months than I knew about my previous housekeeper, after 5 years. Another unexpected change: my increased awareness of the people around me, my greater attentiveness to their stories. At Evergreen, Julian was waiting with Timothy to review our approach for the afternoon meeting with Delgado Manufacturing. We settled into the conference room, spreading reports and projections across the table. Their energy consumption is down 18%, Timothy noted, highlighting a section of the data. Better than projected. But materials conversion is lagging, Julian countered, flipping to another page. The new biodegradable packaging is causing production line issues. I studied the reports carefully. The packaging problems are technical, not conceptual. They need engineering support, not a strategy revision. Julian nodded. I've arranged for Helena to join us today. She's brought in a packaging consultant from her previous firm. Good, I approved. Robert needs to see we're providing solutions, not just identifying problems. The morning passed quickly as we refined our presentation and response strategy. At noon, Helena arrived with the consultant, a young woman with a quick mind and practical approach that complemented our more theoretical framework. Together, we developed a comprehensive plan to address the production line issues without compromising. The sustainability goals. By the time Robert Delgado's team arrived at 2, I felt the familiar surge of professional confidence that had initially attracted me to consulting work. The meeting progressed smoothly, with Robert expressing both his frustrations and his commitment to continuing the sustainability initiative. The board is watching these numbers closely, he admitted during a discussion of implementation costs. They're supportive in principle, but quarterly profits still drive their decision-making. Short-term thinking is the enemy of true sustainability, I remarked, catching Julian's approving nod. But we can address their concerns with phased implementation that shows incremental benefits. Helena's packaging consultant presented her technical solutions, complete with projected timelines and cost analysis. Robert's production manager engaged enthusiastically, asking detailed questions that suggested genuine interest rather than skepticism. As the meeting concluded, Robert pulled me aside. You know, Professor Wilson, when my wife had her hip replacement last year, her doctors kept telling her to focus on immediate recovery goals. Standing up, walking to the bathroom, climbing one step. But no one talked about the broader picture, how these small achievements connected to returning to her normal life. I nodded, recognizing the parallel to my own recovery experience. What I appreciate about your approach, he continued, is that you show us both the immediate steps and the larger vision. You help us see how these difficult changes connect to long-term sustainability, not just environmentally, but financially. His words stayed with me throughout the remainder of the afternoon. When Eleanor arrived to drive me home, I was still reflecting on the connection between personal recovery and organizational transformation. Productive day? She asked as we navigated through rush hour traffic. Very, I confirmed, and thought-provoking. At home, I called Melissa to confirm her Thanksgiving travel plans. She answered immediately, her voice warm with enthusiasm. Mom, I was just about to call you. Eleanor mentioned you'd called yesterday. Your flight arrives Wednesday evening at 6? Yes, and Daniel is actually coming a day early to help prepare. He's taken an interest in cooking since we moved to Phoenix. Says it's his form of stress relief after long days at the firm. I smiled at this unexpected insight into my son-in-law. Though we had always been cordial, Daniel had remained somewhat reserved in my presence. Perhaps this visit would offer an opportunity to develop a more substantial relationship. That's thoughtful of him, I said, though Eleanor has everything well in hand. Speaking of Eleanor, Melissa segued, how are things working with her? Is the schedule still appropriate, or do you need more hours? Less? 6 months ago, I might have bristled at these questions, interpreting them as doubt about my independence. Now, I recognize them as legitimate considerations from a daughter helping manage her mother's care from a distance. The current arrangement is working well, I assured her. 3 full days and 2 half-days gives me both support and privacy. Good, Melissa sounded relieved. And the consulting work? Julian mentioned you had a big meeting with Delgado today. We discussed the meeting in some detail, Melissa asking insightful questions about the client's concerns and our proposed solutions. The conversation flowed easily between us, professional colleagues as much as mother and daughter in these moments. Oh, she added before we ended the call. I've been meaning to tell you, I'm presenting at the National Marketing Association conference in Chicago next month. They were specifically interested in our approach to sustainable business marketing. That's wonderful, I said, genuine pride warming my voice. You've earned that recognition. Actually, Melissa hesitated briefly, I was wondering if you might want to co-present. The session is on integrating economic theory with marketing practice in sustainability campaigns. Your expertise would add significant depth. The invitation caught me by surprise. That's a substantial commitment, I said carefully. A national conference would mean travel, navigating an unfamiliar venue. I know, Melissa acknowledged. It's a lot to ask, but we'd have private transportation arranged, accessible accommodations, and I'd be with you the entire time. They're offering to cover expenses for both presenters. Let me consider it, I said, not wanting to refuse outright but aware of the physical challenges such a trip would present. Of course, she replied easily. No pressure. The presentation would be stronger with you, but I can handle it alone if needed. After we hung up, I sat in my study contemplating her invitation. A year ago, I would have accepted without hesitation. Academic conferences had been a regular part of my professional life for decades, but now, each new environment presented potential obstacles. Stairs without railings, chairs without proper support, crowded spaces that threatened my still uncertain balance. Yet beneath these practical concerns stirred something else, a quiet desire to extend my re-emergence into professional life, to share my expertise beyond the controlled environment of Evergreen and its clients. I opened my laptop and searched for information about the conference venue. The Chicago Lakefront Convention Center was modern and presumably compliant with accessibility requirements. The conference dates fell during my regular quarterly neurologist appointment, but that could potentially be rescheduled. Eleanor knocked softly on the study door. Dinner in 20 minutes, she announced, and Dr. Patel's office called to confirm, your appointment next Tuesday. I thanked her and closed my laptop, the conference question still unresolved in my mind. That night, I dreamed of lecturing in a vast hall, my voice strong and clear, my body moving freely across the stage. I woke with the memory of that freedom still vivid, the effortless motion, the unconscious grace that I had taken for granted before the stroke. For a moment, grief washed over me for that lost physical ease, but it passed more quickly than it once had, replaced by determination to work within my new reality. Over the next week, I continued weighing Melissa's invitation. During my appointment with Dr. Patel, I mentioned the possibility of attending the conference. From a medical perspective, there's no reason you shouldn't travel, he said, reviewing my latest progress notes. Your condition is stable, and moderate activity is beneficial for continued recovery. But, I prompted, hearing the reservation in his tone. But you'll need to be realistic about limitations. Conferences can be physically demanding even for people without health concerns. Extended sitting, navigating crowded spaces, managing irregular schedules, all potential stressors. I nodded, appreciating his candor. What precautions would you recommend? He considered carefully. Regular rest periods built into your schedule, maintaining medication timing despite the time zone change, having a quiet space available, if you need to withdraw temporarily, and perhaps most importantly, communicating your needs clearly to your daughter and conference organizers. The last recommendation gave me pause. Throughout my career, I had prided myself on self-sufficiency, on never requiring special accommodations. Even with my teaching schedule, I had managed classes, office hours, and committee meetings without adjustments. The idea of requesting specific arrangements felt uncomfortably like special treatment. Dr. Patel seemed to read my thoughts. "Margaret," he said gently, "adapting environments to human needs isn't special treatment. It's intelligent design. The same principles you apply to sustainable business practices." His framing struck me with unexpected force. I had spent decades arguing that businesses could adapt processes to human and environmental needs without sacrificing efficiency. Yet I struggled to apply this same thinking to my own situation. "I'll consider the conference," I told him as our appointment concluded. "And I'll be mindful of necessary accommodations." That evening, I called Melissa. "About the marketing conference," I began. "I'd like to participate with certain conditions." "Really?" Her excitement was palpable even through the phone line. "That's fantastic. What conditions do you need?" "Private transportation rather than public. A hotel room close to the convention center. Scheduled breaks between conference activities. And..." I hesitated over the last item. "I may need to use a wheelchair for longer distances at the venue." I waited for her reaction, half expecting disappointed recalculation of the logistics involved. "Done, done, done, and absolutely done," she replied without hesitation. "I'll handle all arrangements and send you a draft schedule to review. We should probably arrange for a private room near the presentation hall where you can prepare or rest if needed." Her immediate acceptance and practical approach left me momentarily speechless. No awkwardness, no subtle suggestions that perhaps this was too complicated after all. "Thank you," I said finally. "I'm looking forward to it." "Me too," she replied warmly. "It'll be our first professional collaboration. And Mom, this means a lot to me." After we hung up, I found myself smiling. The conference would be challenging, certainly, but also invigorating. A new dimension to my evolving professional life and to my relationship with Melissa. The following day, I mentioned my decision to Julian during our weekly strategy meeting. His response mirrored Melissa's enthusiasm. "The National Marketing Association conference is significant exposure," he noted. "Having Evergreen represented by both Wilson women will certainly raise our profile in the sustainability sector." "That wasn't my primary motivation," I admitted. Julian grinned. "Of course not. But it's a welcome side effect. And honestly, Margaret, it's good to see you expanding your professional engagement beyond our client base. One conference hardly constitutes a national speaking tour," I demurred. "Perhaps not," he conceded. "But it's a meaningful step. 6 months ago, you were questioning whether you could continue any professional activities." He was right, though I hadn't fully acknowledged the extent of my progress until that moment. From hidden partner to occasional consultant to conference presenter, each role requiring more visibility, more public engagement with my post-stroke reality. Thanksgiving arrived with unseasonable warmth, the temperature climbing into the 60s beneath clear blue skies. Daniel arrived on Tuesday as planned, rental car laden with groceries and cooking equipment. "I hope you don't mind me invading?" "Your kitchen," he said somewhat apologetically as he unloaded specialty ingredients. "Melissa mentioned you always prepare the traditional dishes, but I thought I might contribute something different." "The kitchen is yours," I assured him, watching with interest as he arranged exotic spices and unfamiliar vegetables on the counter. "What are you planning?" "A Southwest-inspired side dish featuring roasted poblanos and heritage corn," he explained, warming to the topic as he unpacked. "And a chocolate chili dessert that sounds strange but is actually incredible." I offered to help, but Daniel politely declined, explaining his process with an enthusiasm I had never witnessed from my typically reserved son-in-law. "Cooking requires my complete attention," he admitted. "It's the only way I truly disconnect from work." Instead, I settled at the kitchen table with administrative work for the sustainability division, occasionally glancing up to observe Daniel's methodical food preparation. His focus was absolute, his movements precise, a side of him I had never been privileged to see. "You're staring," he noted without looking up from finely dicing an onion. "I'm appreciating," I corrected. "You have a surgeon's concentration." He smiled slightly. "Law school teaches you to focus on details while maintaining awareness of the broader context, useful for both legal briefs and complex recipes." "How are you finding the firm in Phoenix?" I asked, realizing we had never really discussed his career transition. Daniel set down his knife and turned to face me directly. Another first. "Challenging," he admitted. "The corporate culture is different from my previous firm. More traditional, less flexible." "That must be difficult," he shrugged. "It's temporary. I took the position because it offered specific experience I needed. In another year, I'll have enough specialized knowledge to pursue opportunities more aligned with my interests." I was struck by this strategic approach to career development, so different from my own steady academic progression. "Such as?" "Environmental law," he said, returning to his methodical dicing. "Specifically, representing businesses implementing sustainable practices. There's growing demand for attorneys who understand both corporate needs and environmental regulations." The conversation paused as he concentrated on a particularly delicate cutting technique. I returned to my work, processing this new understanding of my son-in-law's professional aspirations. When I looked up again, he was carefully roasting peppers over the gas flame, his expression one of complete absorption. "Daniel," I said impulsively, "have you considered talking with Robert Delgado? His manufacturing company is navigating extensive regulatory requirements as they implement sustainable practices. They could benefit from specialized legal counsel." He turned, surprise evident in his expression. "Are you suggesting a professional introduction?" "If you're interested," I confirmed. "Delgado respects Evergreen's recommendations. A conversation might be worthwhile for both parties." Daniel considered this, his usual reserve momentarily replaced by genuine interest. "I would appreciate that. Thank you, Margaret." The exchange marked a subtle shift in our relationship, from polite family connection to potential professional allies. I sent a brief email to Robert that evening, mentioning Daniel's expertise and suggesting a conversation might be mutually beneficial. Melissa arrived the following evening, greeting me with a warm embrace before turning to Daniel with obvious surprise. "You've taken over Mom's kitchen." "With her blessing," he assured her, accepting a quick kiss before returning to his culinary preparations. Melissa turned back to me, her expression questioning. "You never let anyone cook in your kitchen, not even me." "Perhaps the stroke affected more than my motor skills," I suggested lightly. "I find I'm more willing to relinquish control in certain areas." She studied me for a moment. "You look well, Mom. Stronger than when I saw you last." "Feeling stronger?" I confirmed. "The consulting work has been surprisingly energizing." We moved to the living room, leaving Daniel to his cooking, and spent the next hour discussing the upcoming conference presentation. Melissa had already drafted an outline allocating speaking sections based on our respective expertise. "I've structured it so you can remain seated throughout if you prefer," she explained. "And I've incorporated visual aids that will draw audience attention during transitions." Her thoughtful planning touched me deeply. "This is beautifully done," I acknowledged. "But I'd like to stand for at least portions of my presentation. It sends a different message." Melissa nodded. "Of course, we can arrange a high stool at the podium for periods when you need support without appearing seated." "Perfect," I agreed. A balanced approach. Thanksgiving Day itself unfolded with surprising ease. Eleanor joined us for the meal, bringing her famous apple pie as a contribution. Daniel's exotic side dishes complemented my traditional turkey and stuffing, creating a meal that bridged generations and culinary traditions. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on everything from current politics to Phoenix weather, patterns to the latest films. I observed Melissa and Daniel together, noting the subtle ways they supported each other, his hand gently touching her back as she leaned forward to serve more cranberry sauce, her automatic translation of his occasionally obscure literary references for Eleanor's benefit. "I've been meaning to ask," Melissa said as Daniel served his chocolate chili dessert. "How did the latest neurological assessments go? You mentioned Dr. Patel had ordered some new cognitive tests." 6 months ago, such a question asked in company would have embarrassed me. Now, I answered straightforwardly. The results were encouraging. Visual spatial processing is still somewhat affected, but language function has improved significantly. "That's wonderful," Eleanor enthused. "I've noticed you rarely search for words anymore, even when tired." "The brain's adaptation capabilities are remarkable," I acknowledged, "though I still struggle with certain cognitive tasks, particularly under pressure." "Which is why the conference preparation is so important," Melissa added, seamlessly connecting my medical update to our professional collaboration. "We'll practice the presentation extensively beforehand." After dinner, while Eleanor and Daniel tackled the dishes despite my protests, Melissa and I stepped outside to enjoy the unseasonably mild evening. The sky was clear, stars emerging one by one as twilight deepened. "I've been thinking," Melissa said as we settled on the patio chairs, "about how differently this holiday could have gone." "If you hadn't discovered my connection to Evergreen, you mean?" She nodded. "Or if I had discovered it, but we hadn't used that revelation to rebuild our relationship. We could easily have become further estranged." "What changed your perspective?" I asked, genuinely curious about her evolution. "Beyond learning I was a founding partner in your company." Melissa considered the question carefully. "It wasn't just discovering your professional identity," she said finally. "It was seeing that you had dimensions I'd never fully appreciated. It made me question what else I might have missed or oversimplified about you." "Including my capacity to adapt after the stroke," I suggested. "Yes," she admitted. "I underestimated your resilience. I saw the physical challenges and assumed they defined your new reality completely." We sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching a neighbor's cat prowl elegantly along the garden wall. "I've been offered the creative director position permanently," Melissa said suddenly. "They've been evaluating my performance during this interim period, and apparently I've exceeded expectations." "Congratulations," I said warmly. "That's well-deserved recognition." "The thing is," she continued, "it comes with an ownership stake. A small percentage of the company initially, with options to increase over time." I understood immediately the source of her hesitation. "Making you my business partner as well as my daughter." "Exactly," she confirmed. "I'm concerned about potential complications. Personal relationships overlapping with professional ones can be messy." "They can be," I acknowledged, "but they can also be extraordinarily rewarding when built on mutual respect and clear boundaries." Melissa turned to face me directly. "Would it bother you, having me move from employee to partial owner in a company you helped create?" "Not in the slightest," I assured her. "In fact, it feels like an appropriate progression. My professional life winding down just as yours enters a new phase of leadership." "You're hardly winding down," she protested. "The sustainability division is just getting started." "True," I conceded. "But my role is advisory now, not executive, and that's as it should be at this stage." Melissa reached over to take my hand, her grip warm and sure in the gathering darkness. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything you've built. Not just the company, but this. Us. The foundation that let us find our way back to each other." I squeezed her hand in response. words momentarily unnecessary between us. The remainder of the Thanksgiving weekend passed with similar ease. Daniel and I had several substantive conversations about environmental law, cementing our new professional connection. Melissa and I refined our conference presentation, practicing transitions and clarifying key points. Eleanor joined us for leftovers on Friday, bringing updates about her daughter's college applications and soliciting Melissa's advice about portfolio development for a potential art school application. By the time Melissa and Daniel departed, on Sunday afternoon, I felt a deep satisfaction that transcended simple enjoyment of their visit. We had navigated a significant family holiday without tension or misunderstanding, each of us bringing our authentic selves to the gathering while remaining sensitive to others' needs. As Eleanor helped me prepare for bed that evening, she remarked on the successful weekend. "They're good people, your daughter and her husband. Different from each other, but they fit together well." "Yes," I agreed, settling against the pillows. "They balance each other. Like you and your newfound visibility balance your previous anonymity," she observed with unexpected insight. "Changes that could have broken you have instead revealed new strengths." I considered her words as she turned out the light and wished me good night. The stroke had indeed revealed unexpected aspects of myself. Patience I hadn't known I possessed. Adaptability I had theorized about but never personally tested. Vulnerability I had previously avoided acknowledging. But perhaps more significantly, it had revealed the true nature of my most important relationship. Melissa and I had weathered a crisis that exposed our worst fears and failings, emerging with a deeper understanding of each other as complete human beings, flawed, complex, and ultimately resilient. The following week brought an email from Robert Delgado. He had spoken with Daniel during a preliminary phone call and was interested in further discussions about potential legal representation. "Your son-in-law's background is precisely what we need during this transition phase," Robert wrote. "Thank you for the introduction." I forwarded the message to Daniel with a brief note of congratulation. His response came quickly. "Thank you for opening this door. Regardless of the outcome, I appreciate your professional confidence." Reflecting on this exchange, I realized how dramatically my relationship with Daniel had evolved over the Thanksgiving visit. From polite but distant in-law to professional colleague, another unexpected benefit of my stroke-induced life reconfiguration. December arrived with plunging temperatures and the first snow of the season. Eleanor insisted on accompanying me to Evergreen despite the weather, concerned about my stability on potentially icy sidewalks. Her caution proved warranted when we encountered a treacherous patch near the office entrance. Without her steadying hand, I might well have fallen. The incident was a humbling reminder of ongoing vulnerabilities, even as other aspects of my recovery progressed. That afternoon, during a client meeting, I experienced noticeable word-finding difficulties for the first time in several weeks. Another reminder that recovery wasn't a straight-line progression, but rather a series of advances and occasional retreats. Julian noticed my frustration as the meeting concluded. "Difficult session?" he asked once the clients had departed. "Cognitive fatigue," I acknowledged. "Cold weather seems to exacerbate it." "Should we reschedule tomorrow's presentation?" I considered this thoughtfully. The presentation was for a potential new client, a regional grocery chain exploring sustainable packaging options. Significant, but not critical to the division's success. No, I decided, but perhaps Helena could take the lead, with me providing support rather than primary content. Julian nodded approvingly. Adapting to conditions rather than fighting. Through regardless, a sustainable approach to your own resources. His framing made me smile. Precisely. Later that afternoon, I received another email from Robert Delgado, this one addressed to both myself and Julian. His board had reviewed our first quarter implementation results and approved full funding for the second phase of sustainability initiatives. Your structured approach has convinced even our most skeptical members, he wrote. The phased implementation with measurable outcomes at each stage provides both immediate benefits and long-term direction. Julian forwarded the message to the entire sustainability team with a congratulatory note highlighting our collective achievement. Seeing my name among the recognized contributors brought a particular satisfaction. Acknowledgement of meaningful professional contribution, despite physical limitations that might once have seemed career-ending. That evening, I called Melissa to share the news about Delgado Manufacturing and to confirm final details for our upcoming conference presentation. Robert's email mentioned you specifically, I told her. He was impressed with the marketing materials your team developed explaining the initiatives to their employees. That's gratifying, she replied. Internal communication is often overlooked in sustainability transitions, but employee buy-in is crucial for successful implementation. Exactly what I told him, I confirmed. Your team's approach was particularly effective. We shifted to discussing conference logistics. Melissa had arranged everything as promised: accessible accommodations, private transportation, scheduled breaks between sessions. She had even coordinated with conference organizers to ensure our presentation room had appropriate accessibility features. One thing I've been meaning to ask, she said as our conversation wound down. What would you think about extending our trip by one day? There's an exclusive sustainability leadership forum the day after the conference. Several major corporations will be represented, and Julian thinks it could be valuable for Evergreen's visibility. I hesitated, calculating the additional energy expenditure against potential benefits. Would we both need to attend? Ideally, yes. It's designed for senior leadership discussion, exactly the audience we want for the consulting division. But I understand if it's too much. 6 months ago, I might have automatically pushed myself to attend, ignoring physical limitations out of professional dedication or simple stubbornness. Now I assess the situation more realistically. Let me think about it overnight, I said. I'll need to consult my energy budget as carefully as my financial one these days. Melissa laughed softly. Fair enough. No pressure either way. As I prepared for bed that night, I found myself reflecting on the multiplying opportunities emerging from what had initially seemed like career-ending circumstances. The stroke had closed certain doors. Teaching would likely remain beyond my capabilities due to the sustained energy requirements, but had unexpectedly opened others through my increased visibility at Evergreen and the evolution of my relationship with Melissa. The Sustainability Leadership Forum represented yet another potential doorway, an opportunity to influence industry leaders directly rather than through client relationships. The question wasn't whether I wanted to attend, but whether doing so would require resources I couldn't afford to expend given my physical limitations. Balancing ambition with reality. That was the heart of true sustainability, whether personal or organizational. Not denial of limitations, but thoughtful allocation of finite resources toward meaningful priorities. I fell asleep still weighing the decision, confident that whatever choice I made would reflect not resignation to circumstances, but strategic adaptation to my new reality. The morning of our departure for Chicago dawned with a crystalline blue sky and temperatures well below freezing. Eleanor arrived early to help me pack the last items and ensure I had all necessary medications properly organized for the trip. I've labeled everything by day and time, she explained, showing me the pill organizer she had meticulously prepared. And I've included extras in this separate container, just in case your return is delayed. Her thoroughness touched me. Thank you, Eleanor. I don't know what I'd do without your attention to detail. You'd manage, she said confidently, zipping my suitcase closed. But why make things harder than necessary? That simple philosophy had become something of a mantra in my post-stroke life, not fighting against necessary assistance, but accepting it graciously to conserve energy for more important battles, a lesson that had taken months to truly absorb. The car service arrived precisely on time. The driver, a middle-aged woman named Patrice, helped load my luggage, and ensured I was comfortably seated before confirming our destination. Chicago. Conference, I explained. My daughter is meeting me at the airport. First time traveling since your stroke? Patrice asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror as we pulled away from the curb. I was momentarily startled by her perception. How did you know about my stroke? She smiled. I worked as a physical therapy assistant before driving. You have that careful walk, deliberate but determined. My stroke patients who did well had exactly that gait. Her observation made me smile. Yes, first time traveling. It feels like a test of sorts. You'll do fine, she assured me. Just remember to rest before you're tired, not after. That's what I always told my patients. At the airport, Melissa was waiting at the designated meet point, her expression brightening when she spotted me. Right on time, she said, embracing me carefully. How was the drive? Educational, I replied, recounting Patrice's background and advice. Sound wisdom, Melissa agreed, taking control of my wheeled suitcase. Our flight board's in an hour, which gives us time for coffee if you'd like. The airport bustled with pre-holiday travelers, but Melissa had arranged priority boarding and assistance, making the process far less taxing than I had anticipated. On the plane, we settled into our business class seats, another thoughtful provision that gave me adequate space and comfort for the flight. The conference organizers called this morning, Melissa mentioned as we reached cruising altitude. They were confirming the accommodations for your presentation. Everything is arranged as requested. Accessible entrance to the stage, appropriate microphone height, seating options. Thank you for handling those details, I said sincerely. I'm not accustomed to requiring special arrangements. Melissa looked at me directly. It's not special treatment, Mom. It's appropriate accommodation. You would never expect a presenter who uses glasses to speak without them. This is no different. Her straightforward approach eased my lingering discomfort with the situation. We spent the remainder of the flight reviewing our presentation notes and discussing potential questions from the audience. Chicago greeted us with wind-driven snow and temperatures that made my hometown weather seem positively balmy by comparison. The promised car service was waiting, driver holding a sign with Wilson Parker clearly printed. Once our luggage was loaded, we settled into the warm vehicle for the drive to our hotel. I'm still considering the leadership forum, I mentioned as we navigated through traffic. I'd like to attend at least part of it, if we can arrange a late checkout and evening. Flight? Melissa looked surprised, but pleased. I'll make the arrangements. The forum runs from 9 to 3, but we could attend just the morning session if that's more manageable for you. Let's plan for the full day, I decided. I can always step out if necessary. The Lakeshore Hotel exceeded my expectations. Our adjoining rooms were spacious and thoughtfully designed, with accessible features that didn't sacrifice elegance. After settling in, we met in the hotel restaurant for an early dinner, both of us conscious of the need for adequate rest before tomorrow's presentation. Daniel called while you were freshening up, Melissa mentioned as we studied the menu. He's had a second conversation with Robert Delgado. It sounds promising. I'm glad, I said. Robert needs specialized counsel during this transition, and Daniel brings exactly the right expertise. Melissa smiled. He was quite impressed that you recommended him. I don't think he realized you had actually taken note of his professional interests. We had never really discussed them before, I admitted. The Thanksgiving visit provided an opportunity for meaningful conversation beyond polite family exchanges. Speaking of meaningful exchanges, Melissa segued smoothly, Julian mentioned you might be interested in writing a book about sustainable business practices. He said you've been discussing it during your strategy sessions. I set down my menu, surprised that Julian had shared our preliminary conversations. It's just an idea at this stage, a way to distill the principles we're developing through the consulting work. It's a brilliant idea, Melissa said enthusiastically. Your academic background combined with practical implementation experience would make for a unique perspective. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But a book requires sustained focus and energy. I'm not certain I can manage that alongside the consulting work. You wouldn't have to do it alone, she suggested. Co-authorship might make it more feasible. The idea caught my interest. With Julian, you mean? Or with me? Melissa said, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. My marketing expertise, combined with your economic theory, could create something truly distinctive. The proposal startled me. Professional collaboration on a conference presentation was one thing. Co-authoring a book represented a far more substantial commitment. Yet the concept was undeniably intriguing, an opportunity to blend our complementary expertise into something neither of us could create independently. An interesting proposition, I said thoughtfully. Let's revisit it after the conference. See how our presentation collaboration unfolds first. Melissa nodded, accepting this measured response. We ordered our meals and shifted to discussing final logistical details for tomorrow's presentation. By the time we returned to our rooms, I felt prepared, but undeniably tired from the day's travel. I called Eleanor briefly to confirm our safe arrival, then prepared for bed, reviewing our presentation notes one final time before setting them aside. As I adjusted pillows to accommodate my still temperamental right shoulder, I reflected on the remarkable evolution of circumstances since Melissa's text 8 months ago, labeling me a burden. From that painful nadir to professional collaboration and potential co-authorship, a journey neither of us could have anticipated. Morning. Arrived with brilliant sunshine that belied the continued frigid temperatures. I completed my physical therapy exercises despite the temptation to skip them, knowing their importance for maintaining the strength and flexibility I would need throughout the day. Melissa knocked on the connecting door just as I finished dressing, in the professional attire we had agreed upon, coordinated but not identical outfits that subtly reinforced our collaborative relationship. Perfect timing, I called. Come in. She entered carrying coffee and pastries from the hotel cafe. Thought you might prefer breakfast here rather than the restaurant. Conserve energy for the presentation. Thank you, I said genuinely, appreciative of her thoughtfulness. That's exactly what I needed. We ate while reviewing the presentation schedule one final time. Our session was scheduled for 11, which allowed ample time for a measured start to the day. Melissa had arranged for a conference representative to meet us in the hotel lobby at 10:30, ensuring we would navigate the short distance to the convention center without difficulty. How are you feeling? She asked as we gathered our materials. Nervous? Appropriately alert, I replied with a small smile. Professional presentations always trigger a certain productive anxiety. I still get butterflies, she admitted, even after years of client presentations. The day you stop feeling those butterflies is the day you should reconsider your commitment, I told her. Nervous energy fuels exceptional performance when properly channeled. She looked at me with unexpected warmth. I've missed your professional wisdom these past years. Our Sunday brunches were wonderful, but they rarely touched on work in any depth. I deliberately maintained that separation, I acknowledged. I wanted your professional identity to develop independently of my influence. I understand that now, she said, but I'm glad we've moved beyond it. Our conference escort arrived precisely on schedule. A young woman named Tara who guided us through the hotel's connection to the convention center with professional efficiency. The venue was already bustling with attendees moving between sessions, networking in common areas, and visiting the extensive exhibitions. We were shown to a presenter preparation room where we could collect our thoughts before the session. The space was quiet and well-appointed, offering welcome respite from the stimulation of the main convention areas. The room is filling nicely, Tara informed us after checking the presentation hall. We're expecting close to capacity based on pre-registrations. This news triggered a flutter of additional adrenaline. I had anticipated a modest audience for what was, after all, a specialized topic within a broader marketing conference. Melissa seemed equally surprised. "That's substantial," she commented once Tara had stepped out to check final arrangements. "Are you still comfortable with standing for portions of your presentation?" I considered this carefully, assessing my energy levels and the importance of the visual statement my posture would make. "Yes," I decided. "I'll stand for the introduction and key points, then utilize the stool for transitional segments." At 10 minutes before 11, Tara returned to escort us to the presentation hall. The room was indeed nearly full, with attendees representing a diverse cross-section of marketing professionals, corporate sustainability officers, and industry representatives. A small stage had been set up at the front, complete with the promised accessibility accommodations, a gently sloped ramp to one side, appropriately positioned microphones, and the high stool we had requested. The session moderator introduced us with a brief overview of evergreen marketing and our professional backgrounds. As we took the stage, the audience applause was encouragingly enthusiastic. I approached the microphone first, standing tall despite the slight imbalance that continued to affect my right side. "Thank you for that warm welcome," I began, my voice steady and clear. "Sustainable business practices represent more than ethical choice. They constitute strategic adaptation to changing environmental and market conditions." The presentation unfolded smoothly, Melissa and I transitioning between segments with practiced coordination. I utilized the stool during her more extended sections, conserving energy while remaining visibly engaged with the content. When I rose to deliver key economic principles, my voice gained strength and authority despite the physical effort involved. The audience response was gratifying. Attentive silence during technical explanations, appreciative nods at practical applications, thoughtful questions during the discussion period that followed our formal presentation. Several attendees specifically commented on the effective integration of economic theory with marketing implementation, precisely the synthesis we had hoped to achieve. As the session concluded, a small group gathered near the stage with additional questions. Melissa fielded the majority, allowing me to conserve energy while still contributing to key points. Her handling of these follow-up inquiries impressed me. Confident without arrogance, knowledgeable without condescension, and consistently acknowledging my theoretical contributions while adding her practical insights. By the time we exited the presentation hall, I felt the familiar combination of professional satisfaction and physical fatigue that had characterized my academic career. Melissa guided us toward a quiet cafe area where we could decompress before our next scheduled commitment, a lunch meeting with potential clients interested in evergreen sustainability consulting services. "That exceeded expectations," Melissa said as we settled at a table with tea for me and coffee for her. The questions were substantive, and I saw several people taking extensive notes during your explanation of phased implementation strategies. "Your segment on employee engagement was particularly well received," I observed. "The case studies provided compelling evidence for your approach." She smiled. "We make a good team. Your theoretical framework and my practical applications complement each other effectively." "Yes," I agreed, sipping my tea. "Perhaps there is merit to your book co-authorship suggestion after all." Her expression brightened. "Really? You're considering it?" "Considering," I emphasized. "It would require careful planning to be manageable alongside our other commitments." "Of course," she agreed quickly. "We could develop a writing schedule that accommodates both your energy limitations and my travel requirements." I nodded, appreciating her immediate acknowledgement of practical considerations. "Let's discuss it further after we return home. For now, I should rest briefly before our lunch meeting." Melissa immediately stood. "Absolutely. I'll handle any follow-up inquiries that come to our conference contact information. You take 30 minutes to recharge." I returned to the quiet preparation room, grateful for this opportunity to rest without completely withdrawing from the conference environment. Closing my eyes, I allowed my mind to process the morning's events while my body recovered from the exertion of public speaking. The presentation had gone remarkably well, better than I had dared hope when first agreeing to participate. My occasional, word-finding hesitations had been minimal, my balance steady enough to convey professional confidence despite using the stool for portions of the session. More importantly, our content had resonated with the audience, validating the approach we had developed through Evergreen's consulting practice. When Melissa returned to collect me for the lunch meeting, I felt refreshed and ready to engage with potential clients. The meeting took place in a private dining room with representatives from 3 companies interested in sustainability initiatives. The conversation flowed naturally between general principles and specific applications relevant to their industries. "What impresses me," said the sustainability director from a regional manufacturing firm, "is how you've integrated economic theory with practical implementation strategies. Most consultants excel at one or the other, but rarely both. That integration reflects our complementary expertise," Melissa explained, gesturing between us. "My mother's academic background provides the theoretical foundation, while our team's marketing experience translates those principles into actionable steps." I noted her deliberate use of our family relationship rather than maintaining purely professional identification. 8 months ago, she might have hesitated to acknowledge our connection in a business context, fearing it would undermine her independent professional standing. Now, she referenced it naturally, presenting our relationship as an asset rather than a liability. The lunch concluded with promises of follow-up meetings once we returned home. As we walked slowly back toward the main conference area, Melissa checked her phone for messages. "Julian sent congratulations," she reported. Apparently, word of our presentation has already reached him through mutual connections attending the conference. "The professional grapevine remains remarkably efficient," I observed with a smile. He also mentioned that Robert Delgado has formally engaged Daniel as special counsel for their sustainability transition. "The contract was finalized this morning." This news pleased me enormously. "Excellent. That's a significant opportunity for Daniel." "He's thrilled," Melissa confirmed, "and grateful for your introduction." We spent the remainder of the afternoon attending selected conference sessions, Melissa thoughtfully choosing those located in easily accessible rooms with minimal walking distance between venues. By 4 o'clock, however, I found myself experiencing noticeable fatigue, cognitive as much as physical. "I think I need to return to the hotel," I admitted as we exited. "A panel discussion on consumer engagement with sustainable brands. My concentration is waning." Melissa immediately adjusted our plans. "Of course, there's a reception this evening I'd planned to attend, but I can skip it if you'd prefer company for dinner." "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "The reception is an important networking opportunity. I'm perfectly capable of ordering room service and reviewing notes for tomorrow's leadership forum." She hesitated. "Are you certain? I don't want you to feel abandoned in an unfamiliar city." "I am not an abandoned child," I reminded her with gentle humor. "I'm a tired professional who needs quiet recovery time. Go to your reception, make valuable connections, and enjoy yourself." After ensuring I was comfortably settled in my hotel room, Melissa departed for the evening reception. I ordered a light dinner and reviewed materials for the following days. Leadership forum, making notes on key points I wanted to emphasize in those discussions. The quiet solitude was exactly what I needed to recharge for tomorrow's commitments. As I prepared for sleep, my phone chimed with a text message from Julian. "Heard your presentation was outstanding. 3 inquiries already from conference attendees interested in our services. Well done, Professor Wilson." I smiled at his use of my academic title, a deliberate acknowledgement of the theoretical expertise I had contributed to our practical, consulting approach. The professional recognition felt particularly meaningful after months of focusing primarily on physical recovery and adaptation. Morning brought renewed energy and clarity. The leadership forum would be smaller and more intensive than the conference presentation. Approximately 30 senior executives from major corporations discussing practical implementation of sustainability initiatives. Melissa and I had been invited to share Evergreen's consulting approach as a case study in effective integration of economic theory and marketing practice. Different dynamic today, Melissa observed as we shared breakfast in the hotel restaurant. Yesterday was presentation-focused. Today will be more conversational. Indeed, I agreed. Today requires more spontaneous engagement, less structured content delivery. Are you comfortable with that format? She asked. It could be more cognitively demanding. I appreciated her direct acknowledgement of potential challenges rather than awkward avoidance. I believe so. The smaller setting may actually be easier in some ways. Less performative pressure, more substantive exchange. The forum proceeded exceptionally well, with engaged discussion and significant interest in Evergreen's integrated approach to sustainability consulting. By day's end, we had generated 7 potential client inquiries, including a promising connection with North Star Retail, a major national chain whose sustainability director expressed immediate interest in our methodology. Our flight home that evening was quiet, both of us tired but deeply satisfied with what we had accomplished. Eleanor met us at the airport, her reliable presence a welcome sight after navigating unfamiliar environments for 2 days. Successful trip? She asked as she helped load our luggage. Very, I confirmed, both professionally and personally. You look tired but satisfied, she observed with her characteristic directness. A good combination. 1 year later, I stood in the living room of my home, gazing out at the garden where early spring flowers were beginning to emerge. The physical therapy equipment that had once dominated the space was gone, replaced by a comfortable desk where I spent several hours each day working on our book manuscript. The past 12 months had brought remarkable developments. 5 new corporate clients for Evergreen's sustainability division, Daniel's successful legal practice specializing in environmental compliance for businesses, and most significantly, my evolved relationship with Melissa based on mutual respect and genuine appreciation of our complementary strengths. The doorbell rang, announcing Eleanor's arrival. Though I had recovered sufficient independence to manage without daily assistance, she still came 3 times weekly to help with more challenging household tasks and to provide companionship that had evolved into genuine friendship. "Morning, Margaret," she called cheerfully as she let herself in. "Beautiful day, isn't it? Perfect for your garden planning." "Indeed," I agreed, moving to greet her with the careful but confident gait that had become my new normal. The nursery. Catalogs arrived yesterday. I've been marking possibilities for the east bed. Ambitious plans as always, she observed with a smile. Melissa called while I was on my way over. She wanted to confirm your video meeting at 11 to review the publisher's comments on the first 3 chapters. The mention of our book project brought immediate satisfaction. The Sustainable Enterprise, Economic Theory and Practical Implementation had been enthusiastically received by a prominent business publisher, with a contract signed 2 months ago. The collaborative writing process had deepened our professional relationship while providing an intellectual challenge that engaged my academic background in new and satisfying ways. I've already reviewed their comments, I told Eleanor. Generally positive, with some suggestions for additional case studies in the manufacturing sector. Nothing we can't readily address. The front door opened again as Eleanor was hanging. Her coat and Lily, my part-time research assistant, entered carrying a stack of academic journals and a laptop bag. A doctoral candidate in economics at my former university, she had joined our project 6 months ago, bringing youthful energy and current research perspectives that complemented my more established theoretical foundation. "Morning, Professor." "Wilson," she called. "I've found those articles on circular economy metrics you wanted and compiled the data from the Delgado manufacturing case study for Chapter 4. "Excellent," I replied. Let's set up in the study. Melissa will be calling at 11 to discuss the publisher's feedback. As Lily organized materials in the study, I made a quick call to Julian to confirm my attendance at tomorrow's client meeting with the North Star retail team. Their phased implementation of our sustainability recommendations was proceeding well, with measurable improvements in energy efficiency and waste reduction already documented across their pilot locations. Robert Delgado will be joining us, Julian informed me. He's offered to provide perspective as an existing client. Very powerful endorsement. That's excellent news, I said. His experience implementing our recommendations lends considerable credibility to our approach. Indeed. And Daniel's legal guidance has apparently been invaluable during their regulatory compliance process. Your son-in-law has quite a future in environmental law. I smiled at this confirmation of Daniel's professional success stemming from the connection I had facilitated. Our relationship had evolved from polite family interaction to genuine professional respect, adding another dimension to our extended family dynamics. At precisely 11, Melissa's face appeared on my computer screen, professional as always despite calling from her home office in Phoenix. Morning, Mom. Have you had a chance to review the publisher's comments? Yes, I confirmed. Their suggestions align with our existing plans for chapter expansion. Lily has compiled the additional data we need for the manufacturing section. Perfect, Melissa nodded. I've drafted responses to their specific queries about the marketing implementation framework. I'll send those over after our call for your review. We spent the next hour discussing manuscript revisions, seamlessly blending our respective expertise to strengthen the content. What struck me most was the ease of our interaction. Professional respect layered upon familial connection, creating a partnership that enhanced rather than complicated either relationship. As our call concluded, Melissa mentioned her upcoming visit the following month. Daniel's looking forward to discussing the expansion of Delgado's sustainability legal team with you. He values your strategic perspective. I'm happy to provide input, I said, though his success is entirely his own achievement. Facilitated by your introduction, she reminded me. Just as my creative director position was supported by your silent partnership all those years. We all need appropriate support at crucial junctures, I acknowledged. The key is recognizing when support enables independence rather than fosters dependency. After ending the call, I joined Eleanor in the kitchen for lunch. As we ate, she mentioned seeing a community center flyer about a new adaptive yoga class, designed specifically for stroke recovery and similar conditions. Might be worth considering, she suggested. Good for maintaining flexibility and balance. A year ago, I might have dismissed such a suggestion, viewing it as another unwelcome reminder of physical limitations. Now I simply nodded thoughtfully. Could be beneficial. The physical therapy exercises are effective but rather monotonous after all this time. And it would expand your social connections beyond professional colleagues, she added perceptively. Balance in all things, as you always say. Her observation was accurate. While my professional life had flourished in unexpected ways following the stroke, my social circle remained somewhat limited. The yoga class might indeed provide valuable connections with others navigating similar challenges. Later that afternoon, as Lily and I continued work on manuscript revisions, my phone chimed with a text from Melissa. Just heard from North Star. They're expanding our consulting contract to include all regional locations based on pilot results. Congratulations, Professor Wilson. Your economic framework is proving its value. The formal use of my title had become something of a private joke between us. Her way of acknowledging my academic contribution while gently teasing about professional formality. I smiled as I texted back, "Congratulations to us both. Creative." Director Parker, theory without application remains merely interesting. Application without theory remains merely temporary. It was a phrase we had developed for the book, a distillation of our complementary approach that had proven so effective in both our consulting work and our personal reconciliation. neither of us alone could have crafted the methodology that was transforming corporate sustainability practices. Together, we had created something genuinely innovative and effective. That evening, after Lily and Eleanor had departed, I sat on my patio watching the sunset paint the sky in vivid pinks and golds. The garden would need replanting soon, perhaps with more perennials this year, creating sustainable beauty that would return season after season with minimal intervention. My phone rang, Daniel calling to discuss strategy for tomorrow's North Star meeting. As we talked, I was struck by the easy professional rapport we had developed since his engagement with Delgado Manufacturing. Another relationship transformed by the very circumstance I had once feared would diminish my connections rather than enrich them. When our call ended, I remained on the patio, reflecting on the remarkable journey of the past 18 months. From the devastating stroke that had left me temporarily dependent and frightened for my future, to Melissa's painful rejection, to the unexpected revelation of my professional identity, to our current collaboration as co-authors and business partners, each stage had required adaptation rather than resistance, creation of new patterns rather than futile attempts to restore what was lost. My phone chimed with one final message for the day, a photo from Melissa showing her computer screen with our manuscript open, a cup of tea beside it, and the caption, "Late night revisions. Some things never change. We both still work better. After dark." I smiled, remembering the many late nights of her childhood when I would find her reading under the covers with a flashlight, or the college years when she would call at midnight to discuss a paper she was writing. Some core elements remained constant even as circumstances evolved around them. I texted back simply, "Some things change entirely. Some remain perfectly themselves. Wisdom is knowing which is which." Her response came quickly, "And having the courage to rebuild what matters most, even when the materials and methods must change." Exactly right. Rebuilding, not restoring. Creating anew rather than attempting to recover what was irrevocably altered. Adaptation as evolution rather than compromise. As darkness settled completely over my garden, I rose carefully to return. Inside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The North Star meeting, manuscript revisions, perhaps exploration of that adaptive yoga class Eleanor had mentioned. My pace would be measured, my energy carefully allocated, my physical limitations acknowledged and accommodated. But within those parameters, I would continue building this unexpected second career, this deepened relationship with my daughter, this life that had revealed itself not as diminished by stroke, but as transformed. Different, certainly, but no less meaningful or satisfying for the difference. The text message that had once labeled me a burden had ultimately triggered a journey toward mutual recognition. Melissa seeing me as a complete person beyond maternal identity, me seeing her as a professional equal rather than simply my child. The pain of that moment had created an opening for authenticity that might never have emerged from comfortable patterns of partial understanding. I closed the patio door behind me, moving through my home with the deliberate gait that now defined my physical presence in the world, different but dignified, changed but not diminished, adapted but fully myself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.